Thanks very much for the invite and for the second introduction as well. I feel very special here. Yes, what I'd like to cover with the National Food and Nutrition Strategy is around the rationale for putting a strategy together in the first place, who was involved with developing it. I'll talk a little bit about the journey we took and some of the outcomes of that. I want to focus a little bit on the priorities that have been identified, and more specifically around the food, health and nutrition priorities, which I think will be of great interest to this audience. And then finish off with some of the things that we have already started to implement and achieve, and looking forward to the future actions, which is what I was asked to do. So the rationale for this strategy has been around really to support the food industry around innovation to produce partly, one focus, healthier foods, but better foods and a healthier supply chain. We want to boost investment in innovation, grow grow markets, and particularly we've been focusing on Asia as being an area where our food industry could gain a lot of benefit. We want to develop training and then develop skills for the industry. Most of the food industry here in Australia is made out of small, medium enterprises, about 98% of them. So helping them to skill up so that they can actually reformulate, take on technologies and adopt them is going to be very important. We want to increase the engagement between companies and researchers so that we actually create those partnerships right across the industry. And there's also was a need for a forum that built these connections between companies who could share their challenges and could actually start to talk to one another about perhaps coming together to develop innovation together, or certainly to address problems together. Who was involved with this? So the National Food and Nutrition Strategy was actually part of what they call the National Primary Industries Research Development and Extension Framework. Within that framework, there are 14 sectoral strategies. So these are like dairy strategy, a grain strategy, a meat strategy, and so on. And then there are 7 cross-sectoral strategies, of which this National Food and Nutrition is one of them. There's another one on animal health. There's another one on healthy soils and so on, and climate change. As you can see from the logos, it was a very inclusive process, and we had organisations from the federal government, the state governments, food industries, NGOs, R&D, tertiary education, all coming together in different forums in order to help us develop this strategy. The scope of the strategy then, ours is primarily focused on post-farm gate, and that's because all of the sectoral strategies, as mentioned, grains, dairy, are focused on farm. That's not to say that there should be a separation between on-farm and post-farm gate. So a lot of the research work that we did has been talking with the sectoral strategies leaders and ensuring that there is not so much overlap, but ensuring that there is actually no gaps and that there is interface between all of them. But what we are talking about is from post-farm gate right the way through to the consumer, and including the nutrition of the consumer, so what they eat, but not just solely the nutrition of the fruit and veg and the foods, but actually what happens inside the body, because actually the format in which your nutrition is actually means it's actually different nutrition that your body perceives and actually can access. So, and we're talking about, so it's the food supply chain from farm gate to the consumer, and it's the whole food process industry. So these are some of the things that it's not really sort of necessary for you to read, but along the way we conducted a number of surveys and a number of pieces of work to sort of help us inform what the strategy should be about and what the priorities that we should be focusing on. We did a lot of consultation along the way, as I mentioned, including with industry. So we had industry workshops, as well as actually work with the sectoral strategies to map their R&D priorities and see where there is interface between our own, and ensure that there wasn't any gaps. And we have sort of spent time talking about the strategy as it's been developed at different conferences and fora. The one area that I just want to mention as one slide was the work that we did on modeling what happens if you increase productivity in, say, food processing, and where do the benefits lie across the whole supply chain. Oh, sorry, gone too far. And all I want to show is that when the food processing industry increases their market share or increases efficiencies and increases productivity, the payoffs is not just for the food process industry, but a lot of that actually goes back to the farmer, so that they can start to innovate around their crops. They can actually produce different varieties and so on. So it's a win-win situation. So it isn't a matter that work done in one place or advantage in one area of this food supply means disadvantage in another. So this work has sort of shown that there is an advantage of actually working together and that there is payoffs right away across. The priorities then that were identified, and what I've tried to do is map them against the supply chain, but also against some of the mega shocks or mega trends that are occurring around the world, and that have been agreed that these are the things that we need to be addressing on a global scale, not just nationally. So there is food safety, sort of around integrity and traceability of our food supply, and we hear of contamination and problems that have happened in China with the food supply, and Australia is in a very great position of having a very safe food supply that we want to maintain. Resource efficiency and sustainability, so this is all about more for less. Doing more with less. I'll talk about a little bit more about the intersect between food, nutrition and health. There's the future markets and industry competitiveness. So this is understanding consumer insights and market insights, so knowing our markets well, so that we can actually target the types of foods that we should be producing for different sectors of the population. There's the technology translation. That's been one area that's been difficult. There is a lot of technology around, but getting companies to adopt them so that they can, for example, produce healthier foods is not always easy when the company may be only 5 members in it, for example, or it's a family business. And then finally, skills and training. So this is also incorporated, I understand, partly sort of education, but this is actually giving practical skills and training so that the companies are able to develop themselves and to continue their own work. So they don't need their hands held so much. Ooh. Yeah, this is, sorry, we're not going to be able to read this, but each of the priority areas have gone into deeper actions or areas that we are going to be focusing on. And the key ones I just wanted to highlight was the intersect between food, nutrition and health. So we are keen to understand, the drivers of consumer demand for healthy food choices in the Asia-Pacific region. Why do they choose what they choose, and why do they behave in the way that they do? We want to build up the capability for the food industry to produce and manufacture healthier foods. I think it is clear that, and this is demonstrated towards core foods, I would say primarily. We're not necessarily talking about the occasional foods. We need to also start to investigate further and look at substantiation of the nutrition and health of foods and nutrition. It's not a matter of when you eat an apple that you have so much vitamin C, but it's actually how that apple with whatever else you're eating with it gets digested by you, and what bioaccessibility of the nutrition is that your body is going to get. And often processing can actually increase that bioaccessibility of your vitamins and minerals. So I think the appropriate amount of processing with a whole range of foods is actually very beneficial for your diet as a whole, and doesn't need to be seen as always the bad thing as either. And finally, we want to start to look at ways of promoting informed choices around dietary consumption and what consumers are eating. And a lot of the work that's been discussed today is going towards that. So this is very much forming a partnership, and I hope that the National Food and Nutrition Strategy will actually allow be something that can help coordinate and collaborate and bring together all of these different initiatives. Where we're at now is that all the priorities have been agreed. Effectively, this strategy has been signed off by what was the Primary Industry Standing Committee and the Standing Council of Primary Industries. We are now in the stage of implementation, and the CSIRO and the Meat Livestock Australia have been commissioned to lead that implementation. But again, we're very broad in who we've asked to be involved with this, so it is very inclusive, and we're starting now. What we've already started to achieve, so we started to implement a few things that have been as actions through this strategy. So there's the launch of the National Food Safety Forum, and that is to ensure that our food supply remains safe and continues to do so and improve. There's the launch of the Industry Innovation Precinct, and the food one was one of the first ones off the rank, and it's covered under the Food Innovation Australia Limited, and that's very much looking to see how they can bring companies together and get improvements on a whole range of issues that the industry have. And we're also becoming part of a Global Visions project around what the role of food science and technology are to start to meet the societal and technical challenges like obesity, the increases of cardiovascular diseases, etc., that have been related to the types of food that we eat as well. So that's now on a global scale, not just a national, and we have an input into that. Where we are starting to position ourselves then is that we form sort of the R&D arm of the more national strategy domains, and we're keen very much to link up with market strategy and along with industry innovation strategies. So that's almost a pragmatic way of ensuring that there is a technology transfer into the right places in order for us to establish and get some of the outcomes that we want. So this is becoming a much more broader system, an integrated system. And then finally, the future actions. As I said, we're into the implementation phase. One of the key areas is for a healthier food supply and nutrition, and what nutrition we should be targeting is part of one of the task forces that's been pulled together. Our stakeholders are now getting involved in developing a CRC proposal that's around reducing waste across the food supply, and I know that was mentioned earlier as a key thing. I mean, in some areas up to 50% of foods such as fruit and veg are not eaten. They're perfectly okay to eat, but we just don't, because we like our fruit to look perfect and any blemishes, and we tend to throw them away. So we want to look right across the supply chain on that. That will make a huge improvement on the accessibility of food in the first instance. And we're also now working with the Food Innovation Australia and a whole range of other stakeholders that I've named down here to start to look at how we can actually help the smaller to medium enterprise companies actually start producing healthier foods for the consumer. So on that note, thank you very much.